Well, hello. We are back
Hi,
live on the
everyone.
news. Good to see everyone. Seeing some of you guys. Happy Friday is right.
We made it.
Yeah, we made it through the week.
Yes, to the best day, the news day.
Yeah, and I'll just start with this for a second. It's if you're here in the U.S., you might be celebrating Father's Day this coming Sunday, and so I just want to appreciate for myself, my own father, who's president of this ministry, and it's just been great to have his role model in my life and his passion for spreading revival across the country. And I hope you also have a father that has been inspirational and a role model for Christianity in your own life. But maybe you're a father and you're being that light to your children as you're studying here at CLI. And so we just want to, on behalf of the staff, just wish a happy Father's Day to all of you and awesome dads out there that are just doing your best to be a reflection of Christ's love in that role, which is really challenging. And, and again, whenever I think of fathers, of course, we think of our Heavenly Father, and that's the center of all of our lives and all of our relationships. So yeah, just wanted a quick start on that
happy
note.
Father's Day. Good reminder. So we also have been starting with our Christian Leaders College graduates. We have two wonderful men this week. We have Shiloh with his Associate of Chaplaincy and Elias, his Associate of Divinity. So hopefully they'll both be continuing on to bachelor's degrees. And yeah, congratulations to those two guys. Very exciting.
Awesome work, man. Also, we have that Minister Alliance credential meetings have been going on, and there's been some different conversations, and I've heard feedback that it's been super good. So grateful for those that are tuning in. And the next topic is going to be June 22nd at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and that's going to be on Actia Ministry credentials. And they'll get into what that means, but that's kind of the idea of it is throughout multiple denominations. We have leaders here at the Alliance. And so it's going to kind of be digging into that important topic.
Definitely. And I think the discussion's kind of centering around how Christian leaders' credentials can maybe connect with your local church. And I think that's a really fascinating topic. And I think President Henry definitely has a lot of advice and interesting discussion to offer there about how that can really connect with your personal community. And then we also have a great update on the 2022 convention. We've gotten definitely several questions about lodging for that weekend, and Kennedy has blocked off some rooms in the Quality Inn and Suites that's really close to the location. So we have that address and the phone number on the screen there, and if you're reaching out to them, just make sure to say you're booking with Christian Leaders, and that's before Sunday, July 24th. So you can get that block and hopefully be with some other students who are attending the convention.
We also are continuing the social media, and I have been really enjoying digging into this, and I've appreciated the feedback from many of you about that. This isn't a space that we've had a course on in the past, and we're an online ministry, and that so easily goes into social media. If you're watching this live, you're on our network, which is our social platform for those that are graduates, studying currently, alumni, whatever your situation is here at Christian Leaders. We're happy to have you on our network and a part of this news. And so, we want to continue with tip 5. So we're continuing with that. So go ahead,
so we'll get it on the screen there. So we're really kind of digging into how now social media connects with your ministry, whether that's personal or the organization you work for. So social media tip number 5 is within reason, let social media be a place for building ministry. And so that poses that question there, how can social media connect with and promote ministry?
So I think that, again, this is such a relevant question, and we've dug a lot into the space of what should you post? What should you comment? What should you private message? What should that look like? And, we've in that talked about ministry a little throughout, but we wanted to kind of really, laser focus in on that idea of, again, this is a place for you to be a difference maker, to be a minister. So how do you do ministry on social media, and what does that look like? And, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge expert in this, but, we did see a couple biblical tips and some things that we saw online and some ideas. So we wanted to dig into that a little bit.
Definitely. So here's the first slide here. The first one is just remembering and knowing your audience. And I think we've kind of had that as a recurring theme. And then that kind of connects with, finding groups and pages, spaces, whatever that may be on the platform you're on that are gauged towards ministry. And I think that's a good way to kind of know that you're engaging with the right people, the people who are interested in hearing your message. And then that kind of connects with Psalm 133, verse 1 there, that says, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. And when I found that verse, that's kind of the theme verse of the Spanish Zoom meetings we've been having. So I was like, oh, I like how this connects to that, because, you know, when you are in a space with fellow Christians and with people who are truly interested in hearing about the work you're doing, or maybe aren't Christians, but you feel would be benefited from that message, it really is a pleasant space, and it has that positive feel. And so kind of knowing your audience, and
it's a beautiful thing to see the community. And again, that's something I've loved seeing in our network, is a lot of community and just encouraging each other in whatever the Lord has in your life. And again, even if that's ministering to your kids, ministering to a grandparent, ministering to a friend that's having a difficult time,
right,
doing weddings, doing funerals, whatever that is, and whatever. But I definitely agree with that. It's like, find those spots and those groups where, you know, people are going to want to hear about it and connect with it. And again, I think it goes back to that whole point of don't be spamming or soliciting. If you're just posting everywhere, you might have a lot of personal friends that maybe that's not of interest to them, or it's being done in a way where it feels very spammy or soliciting.
Right.
So finding those groups and, you know, in moderation, sharing it maybe on your personal account, I think is, again, a really good space to, you know, kind of amplify your ministry connections and sharing of what you're doing.
100%. So then the next kind of section we have is to present your ministry and interact in a way that has integrity in mind. And this verse really impacted me. 1 Timothy 6, verse 20 says, Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Turn away from godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge. So
man, that's a strong verse, and I think that really speaks into what we see a lot, unfortunately, on social media today. A lot of godless chatter, a lot of false, you know, this is knowledge, or this is wisdom, what the world's telling us is true, or what is, you know, science, or this or that, and, you know, just again skewing what God has told us in the worldview of what, you know, true integrity looks like, and what that looks like. And especially when you're doing ministry, you know, guarding what the Lord, whatever space that is, if you're serving the homeless, if you're serving, in a wedding, whatever that space is, and trusting and guarding against how easy it is to, and that goes back to even the comment one and private, you know, don't get in these chattering fights, or you know, pushing of knowledge that again is not accurate.
Yeah, and I really like that word entrusted, because it makes me think of something really special, like a prized possession, like a really intentional gift. And I think, you know, that's what the gospel message is. And so even more so when we're sharing about ministry and about the gospel message, we have to think of it as an entrusted gift, and we really have to be intentional with how we're sharing it, and really do those checks, make sure that it is the correct space for it, just so that, you know, other people can see that it is something we value highly and we hold really close to our hearts. And I think with ministry, that really is a key.
100%. I love the comment I just saw here from Christina. She said, sometimes jokes help. Christian jokes bring people together. I get a lot of private messages asking questions about faith. Also good is Christian music. Sharing links to songs that speak to people is another great way to minister to people. And then a question here is chattering the same as gossip? And I think that they could be synonyms, you know, sometimes not. You know, I chatter sometimes about meaningless things, and I don't think it's wrong or gossip or whatever, but it still might be not helpful. But I think in this verse, it's godless chatter.
Yep.
So I think that gossip would absolutely fit into that category of godless chatter. You know, it's not bringing fruit. It's not even just silly or fun, or even how Christina shared about the jokes. You know, that's a way to maybe draw people in and ask questions about their faith. So yeah, I think in this verse, the key word being it's godless. You know, it's not producing any fruit. It's not bringing positivity. It's not, you know, it's not helpful.
Definitely. And it goes back to the theme of, you know, as Christians, we invite God into our interactions on social media, whatever they may be. So keeping God in our talk and in our intentions is really the opposite of what godless chatter is. So
yeah, that's
a good
chatter that's bringing God out of it.
Yeah.
That's another good way of saying that. All right. The next tip, part of this tip, is trust God to guide you in the ways that'll best serve your ministry. So again, inviting him in and saying, Lord, make it clear to me if there's somewhere on social media that is going to be a place for me to minister further. And 2 Corinthians 4:5 says, for what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as your servant for Christ's sake. And so, again, just getting in that space of humility and that this is God's ministry. And on social media, it might be my account, but in the end of the day, it's for God. It's for his glory, however we serve and we minister, and inviting him into that and trusting him in that.
Yeah, and I think this made me think, social media is a platform and it's a space to amplify and to, share. And I think this kind of goes back to why ministry can connect with social media. It is a space to amplify Jesus Christ. But again, we have to do it in an entrusted way and really leaning on, prayer and how we've talked about, inviting God into it and making sure you are reflecting on how he is guiding you, not just your own personal feelings.
Absolutely. All right, another one here. There is enough room at the table for what God is doing in your personal ministry and someone else's. I really like that because, again, it's not a competition. Being on social media, it's not a place to, even puff your ministry up and create a facade or, again, try to outshine somebody else's. Social media is a place to not only be able to share what you're doing, but to encourage and share what others are doing too.
Definitely. So that first verse that was on the screen there, Luke 6, verse 38, give and it will be given to you. So this really, goes into encouraging other people's ministry work and sharing messages that are sound and that will help further the kingdom. I think that's so important. And oftentimes I think on social media, we kind of see the loudest voices winning, which isn't always, productive. And that concept of there's enough room for everyone's message, and it doesn't have to be the loudest voice that wins. There's room for all of our messages and all of our ministries.
Well, and God's given us all different ministries, and that's something that I, again, love that I get the privilege to see because I do work at Christian Leaders. Is I get to see, one person's going to be called to homeschool their children, another person's going to be called to go into the prisons and the jails, another person's going to be called to do hospice care, another's going to be called to pastor a church, and each of them, that's a different ministry and a different amount, and everyone's comfortable sharing a different amount too. Right. And so again, the loudest voice or the person that's pushing the most is not necessarily going to be the one that receives truly the best attention or what you said was really good on that.
Like all the causes are worthy, and we want to amplify, the parts that fit with ours and the parts, it's like a puzzle. Each part is different, but it serves, the greater body. And then those two other verses there that kind of go into, the humility. Matthew 6:1 says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. And then also Romans 2, verse 8, which says, but for those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, there will be wrath and fury.
Yeah, I like that a lot. The whole, again, it goes back to, if there's something you're doing, maybe you do want to not share it on social media, and that it's something that you don't want to just show your righteousness or show again, I think social media is such an important space and we should be sharing and encouraging. So, I definitely don't mean to take away from that, but this kind of idea of, don't just be projecting, oh, I'm so righteous, I'm so great what I'm doing in ministry, and finding that appropriate balance of, keeping it between you and the Lord or the people you're ministering to, but then also sharing that so that others can be encouraged and blessed by it. So there's definitely that, fine and difficult line sometimes to find on social media with sharing what you're doing in ministry.
Definitely, very good point. So we have some final kind of reflection questions that we'd love to discuss and maybe share, see your comments in the chat. So the first one is, has the way in which someone presented their ministry affected how you viewed them and their work? And I think this could be really positively
Right.
or really, really negatively. And I think that's just kind of getting at, again, you have to think about how what you're posting can be perceived. And I think something I really like to see on social media when someone's sharing about their work, or whether it's ministry or otherwise, is either something, that's really inspirational and kind of helps me learn about what they're doing in a way that's, really on the ground. Like on our websites, we share a lot of blog posts that share real people, what they're doing in their communities.
Yeah.
And that's something I find really powerful. And it's kind of, a contextualized version of the ministry. And then I also think, having actionable items where it's like, okay, you're telling me about your ministry. What can I do to support it? Whether it's monetarily, whether it's sharing the post, just kind of offering this is how you can help me. This is why I'm sharing it. I think those two things really give me a positive view of what they're
Right.
doing, because it's, it gives it a purpose. And I think that's really
Yeah.
important.
If somebody is doing a local, food drive, hey, can I be a part of that? Can I, then that's something that, again, would be a great thing to share, because the more that are involved with it, the more impact that can be made. And so, social media can be a way for us to find new ways to minister too. And I think that's really important. Again, it's such a fine line on the soliciting for money and spamming and being careful on that. But, again, in especially like a page or a place where, again, you're doing it in a really healthy and boundaried way. Someone reaches out and said, hey, I'm really interested to support this monetarily. Great. Social media can be a place to connect with somebody on it, but again, it has to be done very carefully and very sensitively, or else it can become
right. And not always having, money as the expectation, I think, is important.
Yeah.
Encouraging people to give what they can, whether it's a like and a share, or whether it is money. We have to be open to all of that, and accepting people's generosity in the way that they can give. And I think kind of those things did kind of connect with these second two questions, which are, what are your best practices for putting yourself out there? And then this connects well, should you get a page for your ministry, or should you use your personal account? Kind of those really tactical things.
Kind of interesting to think. Yeah. And I think some of the practices we were kind of just already saying, where it's like, hey, maybe it's a like, maybe it's a share, maybe somebody is interested in supporting, be it by prayer or financial means, but finding, again, knowing your audience, I think goes back to that.
Mm-hmm.
And, a page, I did wrestle with that a lot, like, because Christian leaders, college, Institute Alliance, they have pages, so that there is a space for us to be very ministry focused.
Right.
And I think that's really helpful, because then people can like that like it, and people can follow it who want to follow it. And then, the friends and family in my life who are not interested in it, but I want to keep being friends with them because I want to share the word and I want to encourage, maybe they're not ready to follow or like that page, and they don't want to hear about it, and I think that's where a page can be very helpful. But other times the page might be too much on you, where it's a lot better to just keep it within your personal space. I mean, especially if your ministry is mainly your family, or personal, or within your own church, where it's like, you don't need to get a separate page for your church. They might even have a page. Those are the kind of questions that you might want to ask yourself. Like, what space am I in? Is my ministry more personal in nature? Is my ministry more involved in a church that has its own page and I can share stuff on that page?
Right.
Or is my ministry taking shape into something that should have a separate page and should be separated from my personal account? And those are definitely some important questions to ask.
For sure. And I think that I'm thinking in my mind, Facebook kind of, but there are some really nice features, like, you can create an event where maybe if you are doing a food drive that isn't a whole ministry in and of itself, you can create an event or create, different discussions that will better serve on the purpose of what you're posting. And I think, and I think also just always having kind of like that learning eye when you're on social media, and see how other people are finding success and what you like seeing versus what you don't like seeing, and really keeping that in mind. I think we can kind of get blinders on when we get so passionate about something, and it's great to have that passion, but really channeling in the way that you see others finding success too, and kind of keeping those best practices in mind.
Well, and going just back to, again, love seeing the diversity of different countries and places and languages and cultures and all that. But, in one place you may find that the practice is to make an event, and in another place it might be more, share a personal post, or no, you really do need to post on the page. So again, I think it's important, and this is why we don't want to super suggest what needs to be done, because it might be very much so different in your area, the response and what is appropriate etiquette for social media and ministry work together.
Definitely. And on the different platforms, like if you're using Twitter, that's a lot more informal. There really aren't all those capabilities of Facebook. So kind of leaning into that too, and make sure you're educating yourself on the platform and how it's used in that space, because it doesn't always translate.
So a couple of cool comments I want to share here. Gordon said, this week I saw a person in a Christian academic group I follow cause division because he follows an obscure school of thought and labeled people who disagreed with him as conspiracy theorists. How honestly, I like him as a person, but I thought he really hurt his witness. And that really doing something like that could. It's like, here's somebody that, Gordon, in your case, you've been friends with him, you like him, but that hurt his influence, because now he just labeled people something that is an uncomfortable label to receive. And that is something that, again, once you have it on social media, it's there. Somebody could have even screenshotted it and go, I can't believe so-and-so said that. It's like,
it just shows the power of.
So I think that's a really great point of, again, you might have an opinion or a thought, but be just so careful to not be labeling people or be using a page, maybe even a ministry page or group, to spew thoughts that maybe are not going to build people up.
Right, 100%. And I think that's things, we've seen with CLI's social media, and I think we can draw a lot of inspiration from that, where we do see instances of people kind of hijacking the conversation and making it too personal.
Making them about themselves, even more so than even their ministry or whatever.
Right. But at the same time, I think it's great to see, how on the network or on Facebook groups, as long as you're doing it appropriately, it is a great space to share about what you're doing and receive encouragement. And so I think, that testimony there just does show the power of how one little thing can really affect people and affect how they view you.
Their witness. I like how you said that, Gordon. Joel says, I'd say presentation of one's ministry is important, but people are flawed. And if people are going to make an opinion, the best is always to point them to the Lord. And that is just so important, it is good to share, but even remembering as a Christian, sometimes you don't need to be, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, because it can become very showy. It can become very, going back to that verse, practicing of your righteousness, and what good deed or what good work you're doing. And just remembering, again, especially on your personal Facebook, point them to the Lord more than pointing them to your ministry that you're doing. And, as you continue to serve the Lord, it will just point people there more, regardless of how you're doing ministry or what is going on in your life. So that's so a really good point as well, Joel. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, keep these comments. I see a couple of people typing, it says. So if you have further things to share on that, we're going to look back at the comments, but we wanted to take a little shift here and talk a little bit about, this week we did have some important updates and we went over this course, but we wanted to share a little bit about being a vision partner. Last week we had talked about the new donation form. So this also is a great opportunity to check that out. But we just wanted to share some of the goals that at Christian Leaders, the vision that we have, that we feel the Lord is propelling us into this year, and, just kind of sharing that. So Abby, maybe you want to share these three.
For sure. So the first one is our restorative justice program, and offering our free courses and credentials in the Michigan prisons. And as many of you probably know, this has been kind of a long time coming project. We've put a lot of hours into this, a lot of deliberation, and we're kind of getting to these final stages before our testing period and before launching that. So and as we've talked about, there's a lot of technology that goes into this, and we're so thankful for Jordan, who's created a freestanding,
so much in this.
a freestanding Moodle, and now we're kind of thinking about some